This is Mr. Eugene, and today we're examining a phenomenon that's accelerating rapidly but that mainstream culture refuses to acknowledge honestly successful men. Men with options, with resources, with everything that supposedly makes them desirable partners, are choosing solitude over modern marriage at unprecedented rates. Not because they can't attract women, not because they're socially incompetent or emotionally damaged, not because they've given up or failed, but because they've performed a clear-eyed cost-benefit analysis and concluded that the modern marriage contract offers them nothing worth the risks and costs it demands. Let me start with what I call peace paradox. For the modern successful man, the greatest luxury is not a high-status partner, not a beautiful wife, not the validation that comes from being chosen by a desirable woman. The greatest luxury is a home where he is not criticized, a life where he is not constantly being tested, evaluated, corrected, or found inadequate. The profound peace of being accountable to no one's mood, no one's expectations, no one's perpetually shifting standards except his own. And here's the paradox: this peace, this fundamental requirement for male happiness, has become nearly impossible to find in modern relationships. Not because women have become uniquely terrible, but because the entire structure of modern relationships, modern marriage, and modern divorce has been engineered in ways that systematically deprive men of peace while exposing them to catastrophic risk. So successful men are making a different choice. Not the choice culture told them to make. Not the choice that generates social approval, but the choice that actually serves their well-being. They're opting out entirely, building lives of genuine autonomy that don't include the legal entanglements, emotional volatility, financial exposure, and perpetual performance requirements that modern relationships demand. This is not failure. This is strategic withdrawal from a game that's rigged against them. And today we're examining why this choice makes perfect sense, what successful men are protecting by staying single, and why this trend is going to accelerate regardless of how much pressure culture applies to reverse it. Stay with me. This is one of the most important conversations about the future of male-female relationships happening anywhere. The traditional dream versus the modern reality. Let me start by acknowledging what men were promised and what they're actually getting. Because the gap between those two things is where this entire phenomenon lives. The traditional dream for generations, men were sold a clear narrative: work hard, build yourself, become successful, and you'll earn the privilege of having a wife, a family, a home, a partnership with a woman who respects your leadership, appreciates your provision, supports you through difficulty, and builds alongside you. The traditional marriage contract was fundamentally about complementary roles and mutual benefit. He provides resources and protection. She provides domestic labor, children, sexual exclusivity, and emotional support. Both parties benefit. Both parties are better off together than they would be alone. And critically, the marriage was stable. Divorce was difficult, socially stigmatized, and economically catastrophic for women, which meant that women had enormous incentive to make marriages work, to accommodate, to appreciate, to support their husbands through difficult periods because abandoning the marriage would leave them financially ruined. This created marriages that, while not perfect, were substantially more stable than what exists today. Men could invest in marriages with reasonable confidence that the investment would not be unilaterally destroyed by wives who got bored or dissatisfied, or decided to pursue something that felt more exciting. The modern reality: now look at what modern men are actually being offered when they're told to marry legal structure designed to devastate men. Marriage is a contract that gives women unilateral ability to terminate at any time for any reason, or no reason, while extracting enormous financial penalties from men. Approximately 70 to 80% of divorces are initiated by women. When women leave, men typically lose half or more of assets, pay ongoing alimony and child support, lose primary custody of children, and spend years recovering financially and emotionally from the destruction. No-fault divorce means you can do everything right and still lose everything. You can be a faithful, providing, present husband and father. She can wake up one day and decide she's not happy or that she needs to find herself. And the legal system will reward her decision to abandon the marriage by giving her access to your assets, your future earnings, and primary custody of your children. Cultural messaging that systematically undermines male authority and female respect. Modern women are taught from childhood that men are optional, that independence means not needing men, that traditional marriage is oppression, that they should never settle, that if they're not completely satisfied, they should leave. This creates women who enter marriage with no intention of long-term commitment, who are constantly evaluating whether you're good enough, who feel entitled to perpetual satisfaction, and who believe leaving when they're dissatisfied is empowerment rather than abandonment. Relationships characterized by constant testing and criticism rather than peace. The modern relationship dynamic is substantially about female dissatisfaction and male performance management. He's constantly being tested to see if he's still worthy. He's constantly being corrected and criticized. Nothing he does is quite enough. The relationship that was supposed to be a refuge becomes another job, where he's perpetually evaluated against shifting standards he can never fully meet, or dead bedrooms. The sexual availability that was supposed to be part of the marriage contract vanishes within a few years for most men. The woman who was enthusiastic during dating becomes reluctant, then unavailable. Sex becomes duty, obligation, something she does occasionally to keep him from complaining too loudly. And the man who thought marriage would provide consistent sexual access discovers he's in a relationship where he's perpetually pursuing someone who doesn't desire him. Financial extraction without reciprocal value. Men are still expected to provide financially. This hasn't changed. But what they receive in return has diminished dramatically. Domestic labor? She works too, so he's expected to split that. Children? She has primary custody, so his access is limited. Sexual intimacy? Already covered, minimal, or absent. Emotional support? She has higher expectations of emotional labor from him than she provides to him. He's providing everything he traditionally provided while receiving far less than his grandfather received in exchange. This is the modern reality. And successful men who are capable of clear-eyed analysis, are looking at this deal and saying, no, this is not a trade that benefits me. This exposes me to catastrophic risk while providing almost nothing I can't access more safely and cheaply outside of marriage. The peace paradox. Why solitude is the ultimate luxury. Let me explain something about successful men that culture systematically misunderstands. What successful men want more than anything else is peace, not excitement, not drama, not intensity, not even particularly variety or novelty. Peace. The ability to come home after navigating a complex, demanding world and simply exist without being evaluated, criticized, tested, or found inadequate. Successful men are men who operate in high-pressure environments. They solve complex problems. They manage difficult people. They make high-stakes decisions. They face stress, conflict, competition, and challenge constantly in their professional lives. This is draining. This requires enormous energy. What makes that sustainable is coming home to peace, a space where the demands stop, where he can decompress, where he can be off rather than on, where he's not performing for anyone or managing anyone's emotional state or navigating anyone's tests or expectations. Marriage was supposed to provide this peace. The home was supposed to be a refuge. The wife was supposed to be the person who created calm, who supported him, who made the home a place he wanted to be rather than another battlefield. Modern relationships systematically destroy this peace. Instead of refuge, home becomes another place where he's being evaluated and found wanting. Instead of support, he gets criticism. Instead of peace, he gets emotional volatility that he's responsible for managing. Instead of rest, he gets more work, emotional labor, household management, navigating her moods, performing adequately as a partner against standards that shift unpredictably. And successful men are recognizing, I can have peace alone. I cannot have peace in modern marriage. Alone, he controls his environment completely. He comes home to silence if he wants silence. He makes every decision about his space, his time, his resources, his life without negotiating with anyone. When he's tired, he rests. When he wants to pursue something, he pursues it. There's no one criticizing how he loads the dishwasher, questioning his decisions, creating drama, demanding emotional labor, testing whether he's still worthy. This peace is so valuable to high-functioning men that it outweighs every benefit modern marriage claims to offer. Sex? He can get sex outside marriage with dramatically less risk and cost. Companionship? He has friends, community, pursuits that provide connection. Children? Increasingly complicated in modern family courts. And many men are recognizing that fatherhood in a system designed to separate fathers from children may not be worth the cost. What he cannot get in modern marriage, and what he can get alone, is genuine peace. And increasingly, that's the trade he's making. The cost-benefit analysis, why opting out makes perfect sense. Let's be specific about the actual costs and benefits successful men are weighing when they decide whether to marry. The costs of modern marriage are legal and financial exposure. When you marry, you're signing a contract that gives your wife unilateral power to destroy you financially. If she decides to leave, and statistically she probably will, you will lose approximately half of everything you built during the marriage. You will likely pay ongoing alimony that could be substantial if your income is high. You will pay child support. You will pay for the divorce itself, legal fees that can easily reach 6 figures if the divorce is contested. And all of this happens regardless of who ended the marriage or why. Loss of autonomy. Every significant decision becomes negotiation. Where you live, how money is spent, how time is allocated, what you do with your career. The marriage that was supposed to be partnership becomes constraint. You can no longer make decisions based solely on what serves you. You must accommodate her preferences, her feelings, her needs, and those preferences may conflict with yours in ways that prevent you from pursuing what you actually want. Perpetual performance pressure. You're constantly being evaluated. Is he providing enough? Is he attractive enough? Is he attentive enough? Is he meeting my emotional needs? Is he the man I thought I married? This evaluation is exhausting. It's living under constant scrutiny where you're never quite sure you're meeting standards that she may not even articulate clearly, but that she definitely holds you to. Dead bedroom risk. Statistically, most marriages become sexless or near sexless within a few years. The sexual access that was part of what made marriage attractive disappears, and you're trapped in a legal contract with someone who no longer desires you, but who still has legal claim to your resources and your children. Emotional labor. You're expected to manage her emotional state, to provide support, validation, reassurance constantly, to navigate her moods, to be available for emotional processing. This is not reciprocal. Her expectation of emotional labor from you typically far exceeds what she provides to you. And it's exhausting in ways that men who haven't experienced it often don't anticipate. Loss of your social circle. Many men discover after marriage that their friendships atrophy because she doesn't like them spending time with male friends, or because her social preferences take priority, or simply because married life leaves no time for maintaining friendships. The connections that sustained him before marriage often disappeared during it, leaving him isolated and dependent on her for social connection. Risk of being trapped with someone whose character was hidden. Many women successfully perform a different version of themselves during dating and early marriage. The woman you married may not be the woman you're living with 3 years later. And once you're legally and financially entangled, exit becomes devastatingly expensive, even if you recognize you've been deceived about who she actually is. The benefits of modern marriage sex. Except the data shows most marriages become sexless relatively quickly, so this benefit often doesn't materialize or doesn't last. Companionship. Except you can get companionship from friends, community, pursuits without the legal and financial exposure marriage creates. Children. This is the only benefit that's genuinely unique to marriage, biological children raised in an intact household. But even this is increasingly compromised by family courts that systematically separate fathers from children when marriages end. And with 70% of divorces initiated by women, betting on an intact household lasting until your children are grown is betting against the odds. Social validation. Being married signals that you're a successful adult man who was chosen by a woman. But for successful men who are genuinely confident, this validation becomes less important than the actual quality of their daily lives. When you lay out the costs and benefits honestly, the calculation is stark. Marriage for modern men offers very little that can't be accessed more safely outside marriage, while imposing enormous costs and risks that dramatically outweigh the benefits. This is not men failing to understand the value of relationships. This is men understanding perfectly clearly what modern relationships actually cost versus what they actually provide. Who's opting out? The profile of men choosing solitude. This is critical to understand because culture wants to characterize men who opt out as losers, incels, men who couldn't attract women anyway, and are rationalizing their failure as choice. That narrative is completely wrong. The men opting out of modern marriage, the men building lives of intentional solitude, are disproportionately successful men with options, professionally successful. These are men with careers, with businesses, with income substantially above average, men who worked hard to build themselves and who have resources to protect. They're not opting out because they have nothing to offer. They're opting out because they have everything to lose. Financially stable. These are men with assets, with investments, with wealth they've accumulated over years or decades of work. They understand that marriage exposes all of that to division and divorce. And they're making the rational calculation that protecting what they've built is more important than accessing the diminishing benefits marriage offers. Physically fit. Many of these men maintain themselves well. They're not opting out because they can't attract women. They're opting out despite being able to attract women because they've seen what happens after attraction when legal and emotional entanglement begins. Socially connected. These men typically have friendships, communities, pursuits that give their lives meaning and connection. They're not isolated losers. They're men who have built rich lives that don't require a romantic partner to be fulfilling, psychologically healthy. These are men who are comfortable with themselves, who have done work to understand who they are and what they want. They're not avoiding relationships out of fear or inadequacy. They're avoiding relationships out of genuine preference after honest evaluation of what relationships cost versus what they provide, experienced with women. Many of these men have been married before. They've been through divorce. They've seen firsthand what the legal system does to men. They're not making decisions from ignorance. They're making decisions from comprehensive understanding of exactly what marriage costs when it ends. And they're deciding, never again. This is not men failing. This is men succeeding at protecting themselves from systems designed to destroy them. Culture wants to shame these men to tell them they're afraid of commitment, that they're selfish, that they're failing to grow up and take responsibility for building families. But what culture calls failure, these men experience as strategic success. They're winning by refusing to play a rigged game, the counter-arguments and why they fail. Let's address the objections that get raised whenever this topic comes up. You're just bitter from a bad experience. Maybe, but that doesn't make the analysis wrong. If a man touches a hot stove and learns that hot stoves burn, we don't say he's bitter and should try touching hot stoves again. We say he learned something valuable from experience. Men who've been through divorce and opt out afterward aren't bitter. They're educated. Not all women are like that, true, but enough women are like that, and the legal system rewards that behavior sufficiently that betting on finding the exception is betting against the odds. You're asking men to risk everything they've built on the hope that they'll find one of the rare women who won't weaponize the legal advantages available to her. That's not a bet rational men make when the downside is catastrophic. You're being selfish. What about building families and contributing to society? Men opting out aren't failing to contribute to society. They're contributing in other ways, through their work, through mentorship, through community engagement. What they're not doing is exposing themselves to systems designed to destroy them for the purpose of maintaining a social structure that no longer serves them. That's not selfish. That's self-preservation. You'll end up lonely and regretful, maybe, but the data on male happiness in marriage versus single is not nearly as clear as culture claims. Married men report higher life satisfaction in surveys, but those surveys include massive selection bias. Men who are capable of being happy married select into marriage. Men who would be miserable married select out. And divorced men, men who tried marriage and exited, report life satisfaction that rebounds to meet or exceed married men over time. The assumption that men without wives will inevitably be miserable is not supported by the lived experience of men who are actually single by choice in their 40s, 50s, 60s. Many of them report that this is the best period of their lives, the period of maximum freedom, maximum peace, maximum ability to build exactly the life they want. This is just MGTOW rebranded, and that's a toxic movement. The men I'm describing aren't part of a movement. They're not organizing. They're not creating communities around their choice. They're simply living their lives independently and quietly. The fact that many men are making the same choice independently, performing the same cost-benefit analysis and arriving at the same conclusion, doesn't make it a movement. It makes it a rational response to changed incentive structures. What this means for the future if this trend continues, and all indicators suggest it will accelerate, what happens? Marriage rates will continue declining. We're already seeing this. Marriage rates are at historic lows and falling. Successful men who would have been the most desirable partners are increasingly opting out entirely. This leaves women competing for a shrinking pool of men willing to marry, which further degrades the bargaining position of women who want traditional partnerships. Birth rates will continue collapsing. Men opting out of marriage are also opting out of fatherhood in most cases. The men who would have been good fathers, stable, resourceful, committed, are choosing not to have children rather than exposing themselves to family courts designed to separate fathers from children. This has profound demographic and social consequences that we're only beginning to see. Women will face increasing difficulty finding partners willing to commit. As more men opt out, the women who want traditional partnerships will find fewer men willing to provide them. The men who are still willing to marry will have more leverage, which may shift relationship dynamics. But the overall result is likely to be substantial female frustration as the partners they want become increasingly unavailable. Social pressure on men to marry will intensify. Culture will respond to male opt-out by increasing shame, by characterizing these men as failures, by questioning their masculinity, by suggesting they're selfish or broken. This pressure will not work on men who have genuinely chosen solitude after rational analysis. But it may pressure some men into marriages they shouldn't enter, which will simply create more divorces and more men learning from experience why opting out makes sense. Alternative relationship structures may emerge. As traditional marriage becomes less attractive to men and less available to women, we may see the emergence of other arrangements, long-term relationships without legal marriage, explicit contract-based relationships, relationship structures that protect male assets while providing some benefits of partnership. Or we may simply see increasing numbers of people living independently while having casual or serial relationships that never reach the level of legal commitment. Final thoughts. This is not failure, this is adaptation. Successful men opting out of modern marriage are not failing. They're not broken. They're not afraid of commitment or intimacy. They're making rational decisions based on clear-eyed analysis of costs, benefits, and risks. The traditional dream, work hard, build yourself, earn the privilege of a stable marriage with a woman who respects and supports you, that dream is not available in modern culture. What's available instead is a legal structure designed to devastate men financially, a cultural environment that systematically undermines male authority and female respect, and relationships characterized by perpetual testing and criticism rather than peace. When the deal changes, rational actors adapt to the new reality. They don't continue participating in systems that don't serve them out of nostalgia for how things used to be or because culture shames them for refusing to participate. The men choosing solitude are protecting something valuable: their peace, their resources, their freedom, their ability to build lives on their own terms without constant evaluation and criticism from partners who were taught that men are optional and that leaving when dissatisfied is empowerment. This is not a tragedy. This is not men giving up on love or connection. This is men choosing peace over chaos, autonomy over constraint, safety over risk. And for successful men who understand what modern relationships actually cost, this is the right choice. If you're considering marriage, perform the cost-benefit analysis honestly. Look at what you're actually being offered versus what you're risking. Talk to divorced men about what the process actually cost them, financially, emotionally, spiritually. Look at the statistics on female-initiated divorce, dead bedrooms, family court outcomes. Make an informed decision rather than following a script written by people who don't have your interests in mind. And if you decide that solitude serves you better than modern partnership, that the peace and freedom and safety of building your life independently outweighs the diminishing benefits modern marriage offers, own that choice proudly. You're not failing. You're succeeding at protecting yourself and building a life that actually serves your well-being. Drop a comment sharing your perspective. Are you married and happy? Married and struggling? Single by choice? What's your cost-benefit analysis? Subscribe, because this channel will continue examining the hard truths about modern relationships that help men make informed decisions rather than following cultural narratives that don't serve them. Stay free, stay at peace, and never let anyone shame you for choosing what actually serves your life over what culture tells you you're supposed to want.